What if the real cover-up isn't happening behind locked doors or secret meetings, but right in front of our eyes, disguised as everyday politics? While the media floods us with noise about borders and laws, something far more dangerous is being hidden in plain sight. The truth about one of the most powerful criminal networks in modern history that in a single moment on the House floor, Representative Pramila Jayapal cut through the fog. She wasn't talking about immigration paperwork or party lines. She was talking about power, how it hides, how it manipulates, and how it silences anyone who gets too close to the truth.
Believe that the Trump administration is not prioritizing the removal of dangerous criminals and public safety threats, and nearly 60% disapprove of how the Trump administration is using immigration detention facilities. This is not surprising in the least. As the ranking member said, ICE's own data revealed that roughly 65% of people in immigration detention have zero criminal convictions. Zero. It is clear that this administration is not targeting the so-called worst of the worst, as President Trump claimed on the campaign trail. Instead, they are targeting everyone they think they may be able to deport. Tom Homan, the president's so-called border czar, said that arresting non-criminals is, quote, our job. In Los Angeles, ICE has been racially profiling people, indiscriminately arresting and holding people, causing fear and terror in people of all legal statuses who simply look Latino or speak Spanish or congregate on certain corners. Today's bill is just more of the same scapegoating and lying about immigrants. Once again, the majority implies that somehow we don't already have consequences for unlawful entry and re-entry. That is absolutely false. Current law already includes harsh sentences and are some of the most prosecuted laws in our country every single year. This bill would add ridiculous mandatory minimum sentences, going up to life potentially, onto the crimes of unlawful entry and re-entry. Now, this makes no sense on multiple levels. If the administration is seeking to deport, quote, the worst of the worst, why put them in incarceration facilities? Perhaps this is just another ploy to give private for-profit prison companies more money so they can build more facilities, make more profit, and ultimately contribute more to the Republican campaign coffers. In addition, as the ranking member said in his statement, mandatory minimums just do not work. We have actually seen this over and over again. Harsh enforcement is not the answer. I don't know why my colleagues are having such a hard time with this. The first Trump administration actually tried to weaponize unlawful entry prosecutions by separating over 5,000 children from their parents. The entire country, Republican, Independent, and Democrat, was horrified at this, and the administration ultimately had to abandon their family separation policy. But still today, over 1,000 of these kids remain separated from their parents. And yet, despite this despicable, absurdly cruel policy, a 2018 study found zero statistically significant relationship between the family separation policy and the number of apprehensions at the border. These kinds of indiscriminate, harsh enforcement efforts are a waste of taxpayer dollars and detrimental to the kind of country that we are trying to create. The U.S. already has the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, and it costs U.S. taxpayers about $182 billion every year, not to mention the social cost to lock up nearly 1% of the adult population. This bill would skyrocket that number. Now, actually, it was during the first Trump term that Republicans joined Democrats in actually rolling back some mandatory minimum sentences in the First Step Act that was signed by, guess who? President Donald Trump himself in 2018. But I guess all good policy is once again falling to the feet of the divisive political rhetoric around immigrants and crime that my colleagues across the aisle have embraced as their salvo to save them from the bleak economic picture our country faces today. Higher joblessness, Trumpflation, a host of reckless policies, including trade wars, that have cost the American people. The Republican big bad betrayal bill is unpopular everywhere in the country, no matter how you spin it, because Americans know that kicking 17 million Americans off of health care just so you can give a $7 trillion tax break to the wealthiest billionaire donors and giant corporations is outrageous, and the American people want us to roll it back. One more minute.
Additional 30 seconds.
In just 19 days, government funding expires. Right now, Americans across the country face rural hospitals that are closing, higher prices for back-to-school supplies, double-digit increases in healthcare premiums, and the Republican majority, what are we spending our time on? This terrible bill. What a giant abdication of the huge responsibility that the American people put on us here in Congress. I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill, and I yield back.
Her speech didn't just call out hypocrisy, it exposed the rot inside the system itself. Because while lawmakers argue over who deserves freedom, the real criminals are still free. Files remain sealed. Survivors still wait for justice. And those who enabled a global trafficking ring walk untouched, protected by the same institutions claiming to defend law and order. Jayapal began by challenging the entire charade. A bill that punished immigrants while the powerful quietly rewrote history behind closed doors. Why? She demanded. Are we spending time on laws that lock up desperate families, while the people who preyed on children are being protected? It wasn't just a question, it was an accusation. She reminded the chamber that this wasn't a partisan fight. This was a moral one. While Congress wasted hours arguing about who to cage, an entire case filled with names, money trails, and connections to the elite was being buried deeper by the day. And she was right, because every time attention turns toward immigration panic, the headlines about Epstein's network fade away. That's the playbook. Distract the public with outrage while quietly deciding which truths are too dangerous to reveal. Jayapal wasn't speaking in metaphors. She pointed to hard facts. There's a bipartisan petition demanding the full release of the Epstein files. Not just the carefully edited ones the Justice Department allows. But leadership still refuses. She mentioned how one of Epstein's closest collaborators, Ghislaine Maxwell, received what many have called a cushy deal, quietly approved through the Deputy Attorney General's office. The message was clear: if you're powerful enough, justice becomes negotiable. And that's what makes her words so dangerous. She's naming the game. Because what do we see instead? Endless talk about law and order, about protecting borders, about cracking down. Yet those same voices stay silent when it comes to exposing how influence, money, and connections protect the guilty. The system isn't failing. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to. While migrants sleep on detention center floors, the men who bankrolled decades of exploitation sleep on yachts and estates. While entire families are torn apart, the people who orchestrated crimes against children negotiate their prison assignments. Jayapal's outrage wasn't theatrical, it was human. She reminded everyone that roughly 65% of people held in immigration detention have zero criminal convictions. Zero. Yet we keep funding new private prisons, enriching corporations that profit off incarceration, companies that, in turn, fund the very politicians writing these laws. Justice has become a business. Each new mandatory minimum means a new stream of revenue for those who build cages. The harsher the sentence, the higher the stock price. And that's the real irony. Congress finds endless time and money to expand detention centers, but somehow there's no urgency to release the documents that could finally expose how the world's most powerful men escaped accountability. Think about that. The same system that hunts the powerless bends over backward to shield the elite. Jayapal connected the dots. The same pattern repeating again and again. Fear is profitable. Outrage is a smokescreen. The media amplifies whatever keeps us divided, while the truth, the one that could actually unite the country against corruption, stays locked away in classified files. She invoked the statistics the public rarely hears. Most Americans, nearly 8 out of 10, see immigration as a good thing. A majority disapprove of family separations, indefinite detentions, and the weaponization of fear. People want compassion, fairness, and transparency. Yet those values threaten the political theater built on division. Jayapal's words cut deeper than a policy speech. They were a moral X-ray of a country that claims to value justice but refuses to confront who it protects. She exposed the hypocrisy of a government that punishes those seeking safety while defending those who exploited vulnerability for decades. And beneath that truth lies something even more unsettling: silence. The kind that doesn't happen by accident. The kind maintained through influence, donations, and quiet phone calls. Files redacted, names hidden, deals struck behind curtains of legality. Every time a new scandal erupts, we're told it's unrelated, just politics as usual. But Jayapal showed that these events are connected by a single thread: power preserving itself. When she mentioned the cushy prison deal, it wasn't just about one person. It was a symbol of how accountability stops where privilege begins. Victims who spoke out were promised justice. Yet years later, they still wait while officials debate paperwork. The truth isn't lost, it's withheld. And yet, while Congress argues about the cost of compassion, there's no debate about the cost of corruption. Billions flow into detention contracts and political coffers, while communities struggle to afford healthcare, education, or basic dignity. Jayapal called it what it is: selective justice. The law bends easily when wealth is involved, but it breaks brutally for everyone else. The same government that can detain a teenager in minutes somehow can't unseal files that have sat for years, holding evidence of the most grotesque abuses imaginable. She dared to say what many think, but few in Washington will ever admit. This isn't incompetence. It's protection, and that's when the atmosphere shifted. Her speech wasn't just defiance, it was exposure. She was shining a light on a system built to keep people distracted with border panic while the real crimes are buried under bureaucracy. The longer she spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't about immigration at all. It was about misdirection, a magician's trick on a national scale. The louder the outrage about one issue, the quieter the truth about another. Because every minute spent debating who deserves entry is a minute not spent asking who deserves accountability. And as she pointed out, even the data tells us Americans are waking up to the manipulation. They see that the fear narrative no longer works. People want justice that's consistent, whether you're a billionaire or a single mother crossing a border to save your child. What Jayapal did on that floor wasn't performative, it was revolutionary. She reminded everyone that the true measure of a nation isn't how it treats the powerful, but how it protects the powerless. And that's why her closing line hit harder than any headline. She looked at her colleagues and reminded them that every second wasted on scapegoating immigrants is a second stolen from victims still waiting for justice, from families still struggling to survive, from citizens who believe truth still matters. She wasn't just condemning a bill. She was indicting a system. A system that has turned accountability into an inconvenience. A system where political theater replaces moral responsibility. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: the real threat to democracy isn't coming from the border. It's coming from the boardrooms, the courtrooms, and the backrooms where truth is negotiated like currency. It's the people who believe they're untouchable, manipulating laws and narratives to protect their legacy. The danger isn't chaos from outside. It's corruption from within. Jayapal's voice carried a warning. Democracy doesn't vanish in a single moment. It erodes quietly, through distractions, excuses, and silence. It fades when we stop paying attention, when we stop demanding the truth. And that's why this moment matters. Because it's not just about politics. It's about power, accountability, and the kind of future we're willing to accept. So don't tune out. Don't let this story fade into the background noise of another political debate. Ask why these files remain sealed. Ask why the same names keep being protected. Ask why the public keeps getting partial truths while the people responsible for exploitation continue to live freely. Because transparency isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of justice. The more we accept secrecy, the more we normalize corruption. And the longer we stay silent, the deeper the cover-up becomes. If there's one thing this moment should teach us, it's that truth doesn't survive on its own. It survives when ordinary people refuse to let power bury it. So keep asking questions. Keep watching. Keep sharing stories that the powerful want forgotten. Because justice isn't a partisan issue. It's a human one. And if you believe truth deserves daylight, then don't let this conversation end here. Share this video, keep it alive, and make sure the people hiding behind sealed files know that the world is still watching. Subscribe, stay informed, and help bring the truth back into the light before it disappears for good.